Do you want to peer through the mist and lift back the veil? Let's take a moment.
Pause. Breathe. Listen. The universe is always listening. Now is the time for you to listen back.
I use astrology as a mental framework or a point of view to help me understand the world. If you want to know more about how I do that, I'll put a link down below and you can check out my introduction to astrology for something you don't have to believe in. I've seen a lot of hype going on around online and everyone is kind of jumping in on the bandwagon of Neptune moving into Aries, about what it means for humanity and the current state of the world as we see it. Yet, it doesn't mean anything. Neptune is reportedly a ball of gas, and Aries is a made-up image formed by an observable group of stars that once upon a time were on the horizon at dawn on the day of the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. But the last time Neptune was in this position of the sky, some pretty amazing things happened in the world. So considering the cyclic nature of all life and systems that sustain it, let's take a look at the last time this planet was in Aries to give us an idea of what we might be in for at this point in cycle. The last cycle of Neptune in Aries was in 1861 through to 1875. Yep, that's right. Just under 165 years ago. So this transition from Pisces into Aries is actually a big deal. The last time Neptune entered into Aries, 1861 to 1875, the world moved through 4 converging shifts. War escalated and industrialized with mass media, telegraph, photography, newspapers, shaping perception alongside the battlefield. We had national identities consolidated through conflict, most notably in the unification of Germany and the restructuring of Japan. Spiritual authority decentralized, giving rise to spiritualism and early esoteric synthesis movements, and parallel social experiments multiplied as communes and intentional communities attempted to prototype new societal models. The pattern was clear. When institutional legitimacy weakens, conflict sharpens identity, myth becomes infrastructure, and alternative systems proliferate. Neptune is associated with having a mystical imagination, an idealism that is so high it might be considered spiritual. And anything that comes into contact with Neptune, with that high idealism, with those lofty standards, it just dissolves. And you know when you dissolve one of those tablets in a glass of water and you sometimes end up with a little bit of something left over in the bottom of your glass? Well, that's the truth. And that's also your truth. It's your redemption. You're proving that you can get it right this time, that you can do a better job of reaching those ideals with these truths that you now know are real. And in Aries, which is the will that drives the focus, the ignition, the initiation, identity, and fighting and striving and combating and competing for these things. We're talking about the realm of the identity of the pioneers, the leaders, and the expression of the eruption. It's the rush. Do you know, the last time that Neptune was in Aries, the world caught fire? There were wars for identity. Explosive identity wars. At the exact moment Neptune entered into Aries, the United States split violently over incompatible visions of identity, freedom, and economic structure in the American Civil War of 1861 to 1865. The old national myth dissolved. That's Neptune. There was a violent rebirth of a new identity. There's Aries. mass sacrifice, martyrdom, and redemption narratives. That's Aries and Neptune. And the dream of unity was shattered, reforged through fire. Neptune and Aries. This is the archetype of collective illusions meeting raw force. The reformation of nationalism also was part of Neptune entering into Aries. It coincided with a global fever of we must become ourselves, where entire nations reinvented their identity in a wave of nationalism, revolutions, and the birth of modern states. We had the final phase of Italian unification called Risorgimento. The movement surged forward towards completion, forging Italy from dozens of fragmented states into the country we find on our maps today, 1861 to 1871. Also in 1861, Wilhelm I took the Prussian throne amid a constitutional crisis over military reform. Then he appointed Otto von Bismarck in 1862, who engineered a sequence of short, decisive wars to rally the fragmented German states around a common identity. In January 1871, when Wilhelm was proclaimed Emperor of the newly formed German Empire, that's 10 years in the making, all throughout Neptune and Aries. And then over in Japan, we had the Meiji Restoration a few years later, which was where the shogun feudal system was overthrown in 1868. A brief civil war broke out, the samurai were abolished, and modern industrialization and nationalism was implemented. Again, Neptune dissolves, Aries reconstructs under pressure. We had the collapse of old classes and social orders, you see, because Neptune dissolves meaning and structures, and Aries incites conflict where identity and survival are concerned. We had the Paris Commune in 1871, which was an attempted grassroots reinvention of society. Short-lived, violent, iconic, and the archetype was the collective dream, the collective execution. And we also had the end of the samurai class in Japan. We had the feudal warrior archetype dissolved into myth, while a new national myth was born. It was classic Neptune to Aries, death of old heroes, birth of new ones. We also had breakthroughs in technology and war. You see, Aries rules steel, heat, weapons, engines of force. Neptune adds diffusion, massification, and mythologizing. And during 1861 to 1875, we saw rapid mass weaponization. We had rifles, ironclads, we had early telecommunication networks scaling out a large degree. We had global rail expansion, we had medicine moving out of superstition into field-tested science, and we had the first media war, which is when the American Civil War was on. It was not only fought on the battlefields, it was also fought in the minds and opinions of the wider public through the expansion of the media itself. The newspapers and the Telegraph brought the war straight home to people. The horrors and images of war were, for the first time, broadcast and relayed to people who never ever set foot on a battlefield. Yet their opinion and support of the war effort mattered. It was the first time the mythology of the glory of war was replaced by graphic images of men dying on battlefields. This was the beginning of industrialized conflict and mass propaganda. We also had spiritualism and occult revival. and myth rebirth. Paradoxically, with all that violence going on with the wars and the shifts and the changes, Neptune sparked massive spiritual experimentation. We had the rise of spiritualism, which is the seances and the mediums, who were mostly women, and it really took off with seances being held in the middle class parlours and the mediums themselves gaining social authority. We saw the rise of automatic writing and trance speaking. We saw public demonstrations of spirit communication, which all came about after the widely publicized death tolls from the wars, particularly the American Civil War. You see, industrialization had been disrupting traditional belief systems, and there was a growing hunger for proof of survival after death from those affected by the war. The theosophical seeds that were formed over this time eventually led to the founding of the Theosophical Society, which synthesized Western occultism, Hindu and Buddhist philosophy, reincarnation, karma, and hidden masters guiding us through our lives. They reframed spirituality as evolutionary, esoteric but structured, global rather than church-based, and it laid the groundwork for modern New Age spirituality and occult revival movements and cross-cultural spiritual borrowings. Romantic nationalism was brought out with myth making, and what I mean by that is that they were when nations were forming and their cultures were restructuralizing through whatever reason they were doing it, the nations romanticized their past to evoke the identity of the present, to inspire a direction for the future. We had New Eden communities and Utopian experiments arise, which were intentional communities trying to build a perfected societies. You see, in the United States alone, we had the Oneida community, which was a communal marriage experiment. We had the Brook Farm, which was a transcendentalist socialism. We had the Shaker settlements, and that was celebrate communal living. These communities tried to remove private ownership. They tried to restructure gender roles, reinvent family systems, combine spirituality with labor. Most failed, but they revealed a pattern. When old systems lose legitimacy, people try to prototype the future. You see, Aries lights the match, and Neptune supplied the idealistic dream. So, take a look around you in the world today. What do you see happening? And most of all, do you see a potential for history to repeat itself? I'll leave that to you.
Move as if no one is watching, because the universe always is. My name's Mark Lingham from Results Astrology, and I'm dedicated to putting insight into action. History doesn't repeat events, it repeats architecture. The question isn't whether something will happen again. The question is how consciously we choose to participate.